The lifeless body of Meera was discovered sprawled across the luxurious marble floor of Sheikh Arman's villa. Her once vibrant eyes were now closed, a haunting stillness settling over the grand room. The opulence surrounding her felt cold and impersonal, a stark contrast to the tragedy that had unfolded within these walls. The police moved carefully, their steps deliberate, as if afraid to disturb the fragile silence. Every detail, the ornate chandeliers, the velvet drapes, seemed to mock the despair that gripped the room. Scrawled on the walls and found on her phone were cryptic messages, fragments of betrayal and a desperate plea for justice. Words like freedom, manipulation, and lies lingered in the air. Detective Aisha traced them with a trembling finger, her mind racing to understand their meaning. The words saying, "Oh, come to solitude, call to me. A live call to freedom, call to me. There's more here than we see," she murmured, her voice low. The clues were scattered, like pieces of a puzzle meant to be kept hidden, but they revealed the anguish of a life torn apart by control. A shocking photograph was discovered, a private, intimate moment between Meera and Sheikh Arman. In the image, Arman's gaze was both possessive and cold, his power evident even in this private moment. Detective Faisal held the photo tightly, his knuckles turning white as he stared at the face of a man whose influence extended beyond comprehension. Was this love or manipulation? He wondered aloud, the question hanging heavy in the room like a threat. Neighbors recalled Meera's quiet presence, her attempts to carve out a life of her own, amidst the suffocating power Arman held over her. Fatima, an elderly neighbor, spoke of her sadness with a trembling voice. She seemed lost, like a bird with its wings clipped, she said. Another neighbor, Abir, added quietly, she was always trying to escape, but never could. The emotional void she lived through surfaced in their stories, each word cutting deeper than the last. Detectives began to piece together a narrative of manipulation, forbidden desires, and the societal pressures that bound Meera's life. Clue by clue, they unraveled a tale of betrayal and secrecy that grew darker with every revelation. The tension grew heavier, the questions mounting with no clear answers in sight. The truth seemed elusive, but it was lurking just beyond reach, waiting to be uncovered. Dubai's luxurious setting stretched as far as the eye could see. Skyscrapers piercing the sky, golden beaches, and opulent mansions that seemed to defy the laws of modesty. Sheikh Arman's mansion was no exception. Surrounded by wealth and power, the estate exuded grandeur. Yet beneath the shimmering exterior lay an unsettling darkness. The opulence of the villa mirrored the gilded cage that trapped those who lived within its walls. Sheikh Arman's dominance was absolute. A man whose influence extended into every facet of his empire and personal life. His manipulative nature was both methodical and ruthless. From business dealings to intimate moments, Arman controlled with precision. His grip tightened around Meera, his thirst for power overshadowing her dreams. "You don't need freedom," he would often remind her. "You need me." Meera, however, was a breath of defiance amidst the suffocating control. A young Indian girl navigating a world of luxury that felt alien to her humble roots. Her hope for independence flickered like a candle in the wind, moments of escape fleeting and fragile. "There has to be more than this," she whispered to herself, yearning for a life where her desires weren't crushed by Arman's will. Arman's family was an extension of his dominance. His wife Amina and his son Omar played roles meticulously crafted to uphold his legacy. They wielded social influence, subtly manipulating perceptions and creating a web of scrutiny around anyone who dared challenge Arman. Meera found herself isolated, a shadow in a world where even small missteps could lead to public disgrace. Whispers of forbidden love and deception began to surface. Close friends and confidants noticed the cracks beneath Arman's polished facade, his carefully constructed persona starting to fray. "She's trapped," Yasmin, a former ally, confided in hushed tones. "Every smile she gives him is a lie." Society's expectations weighed heavily on Meera. Armand's reputation was sacred, and the pressure to maintain honor consumed her. The societal gaze was merciless, watching her every move, judging her every action. The psychological strain became unbearable, and with each passing day, the distance between her and freedom grew wider. In this world of excess and control, Meera's story unfolded, a tale of resilience against overwhelming odds, a testament to the depths of human struggle when bound by the chains of manipulation and societal pressure. Meera sat alone in the dimly lit room, the shadows dancing on the walls of her modest apartment. The weight of her family's poverty pressed heavily against her, yet her dreams of independence burned brighter than the flickering candle on the table. Every choice she made was a calculated risk, but Armand's influence loomed over her future like a looming storm cloud. Her voice quivered as she spoke into the phone. "I want a life beyond these four walls, Mama. I need to be free." "But Armand—" Her mother's voice trembled through the line. "He offers security, Meera. He offers everything we could never have. But at what cost?" Meera's voice cracked, her frustration boiling over. She closed her eyes, trying to push away the suffocation of her circumstances. Their forbidden relationship deepened. Society's disapproval hung in the air like a noose, tightening with each passing moment. Armand's control seeped into every aspect of her life, his charm a weapon, his promises a trap. "You're special, Meera." Armand's words were honeyed but laced with poison. "No one else will understand you the way I do." Yet, with every whispered promise of a brighter future, her trust dissolved. Every shared secret became a noose tightening around her neck. Armand's power was absolute, manipulating her fears and desperation to bend her will. In the quiet moments, when no one else could see, Armand's subtle manipulations chipped away at her independence. He isolated her from her family, controlling her friendships, planting seeds of doubt in her mind. "Your family doesn't understand you," he would say, his voice soft but sinister. "I'm the only one who truly sees you." The walls of her world grew narrower. Her reflection stared back at her, a shell of the ambitious young woman she once was. Beneath the facade of sophistication and wealth, Armand's exploitation thrived. Meera's emotional agony was his playground, a delicate dance of control and deceit. A worthy pinnacle. The strain between them was unbearable, a constant push and pull of power and submission. "You'll regret this, Meera," Armand whispered after a heated argument, his voice cold, his eyes calculating. "You've chosen a path that will ruin you." Yet, even in moments of vulnerability, Meera clung to a glimmer of hope, a whisper of defiance in the darkness, a quiet resistance against the overwhelming grip Armand held over her. As the nights grew longer and the walls of her captivity seemed impenetrable, Meera's story was slowly carved into a tapestry of betrayal, deceit, and emotional turmoil. Each step deeper into the abyss became a testament to her resilience and the fierce desire to reclaim her freedom. Meera sat alone in the dimly lit room, her mind racing as she traced her fingertips across the worn wooden table. Every encounter with Armand felt like navigating a minefield of emotional turmoil. His need for control weighed heavily on her, while her fear of losing her sense of self was a constant ache. Small victories for Armand, a well-placed word, a gesture of dominance, were met with defiance from Meera. Every step forward only pushed her closer to a breaking point. The air was thick with silence as they sat across from each other, a calculated dance of dominance. Armand's gaze was cold, calculating, as if measuring her every reaction. "You don't understand," he said, his voice smooth but laced with authority. "You're meant to follow. You belong to me." Meera's hands trembled slightly as she clenched them tightly, her breath hitching. "I will not belong to anyone," she whispered, her voice barely audible but firm. Armand's smile was a thin line devoid of warmth. "You will regret this," he said softly, his words like a blade. "You've chosen the wrong path, Meera." At night, Meera's mind was a whirlwind of cryptic thoughts and clandestine plans. She scrawled messages on scraps of paper, pieces of a puzzle that only she understood. She would come to Meera, Hopes for freedom mingled with a deep fear of what it might cost her family, her safety, her life. "I need justice," she murmured to herself, her voice hoarse with determination, no matter the cost. But the path was steep, each clue hinting at a deeper conspiracy against Armand's control. Her desire for revenge burned hotter, yet the risks loomed larger. The walls of her world were closing in. Every step toward liberation felt like falling into a pit of fire. Armand knew her vulnerabilities, and he exploited them with precision. His manipulation seeped into every interaction, every moment of weakness. The more she resisted, the tighter his grip became. And the stakes grew unbearable. "You can't escape this," he said one evening, his voice cutting through her thoughts like a dagger. "Every move you make only deepens your fall." Meera's heart pounded in her chest, but her resolve held firm. "You won't control me forever," she replied, her voice steady, though her hands shook beneath the table. As the tension escalated, Meera's every decision became a rebellion against the chains Armand sought to impose. Her cryptic messages carried the weight of her defiance, a flicker of hope against the overwhelming darkness. The cost of freedom was steep, but Meera was prepared to pay the price for justice. Meera stood in the dimly lit room, her breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. The weight of years of manipulation and emotional suppression pressed down on her, suffocating her spirit. Armand's control had grown more intense, his presence a constant reminder of his dominance. But tonight, something had shifted. The tension was unbearable, and she could feel it crackling in the air like static electricity. Armand entered the room, his steps deliberate and commanding, his gaze locked onto Meera with a cold intensity that made her stomach twist in fear. "You think you can defy me?" His voice was low, menacing. "You see? You're nothing without me. You'll learn your place, one way or another." Meera's fist clenched at her sides, her nails digging into her palms as the years of resentment boiled to the surface. "No," she whispered, her voice steady with defiance. "I don't need you anymore. I've learned too much." Armand's smile twisted into a scowl. "You think you can escape me? You're a fool, Meera, a pawn." "You're the fool," she spat back, her voice rising. "Your control has blinded you. You're nothing without your power." The room seemed to shrink as the air grew heavier with unspoken truths. Armand's eyes darkened, his fury simmering beneath his composed exterior. "You'll regret this," he hissed, his tone colder than ever. "You've chosen your path, and it ends here." Meera took a step back, the tension crackling between them. "No," she said again, her voice louder, her resolve stronger. "I won't be your prisoner any longer. You've taken everything from me, but you won't take my freedom." Armand's face twisted, his emotions barely contained. "You think you have the strength to fight me? You don't even realize what you're doing. You're digging your own grave." "I've already been buried by you," she replied, her voice steady, despite the fear clawing at her. "But I'll rise from it. You can't keep me down." The confrontation reached its boiling point as words turned to screams. Armand's desperate attempts to maintain control became violent. His hand shot out, grabbing her arm with a bruising grip. "You'll regret defying me," he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. Meera's breath hitched, but her anger fueled her. "Let go of me," she screamed, pushing against his chest with all her strength. "You can't keep me caged." In that moment, the years of betrayal, manipulation, and suppression collided. The room exploded with emotions too long suppressed, too deeply buried. Armand's grip tightened, his eyes wild with fury, but Meera fought back with everything she had. They grappled, their shouts reverberating through the walls, a struggle for dominance. Armand's desperation to hold control was his downfall, and Meera, finally free from the shackles of fear, fought harder than ever. "You'll pay for this," Armand bellowed, his voice cracking under the weight of his loss of power. "You'll regret crossing me." But Meera wasn't afraid anymore. The violent clash of wills, the intense battle between predator and prey, led to one undeniable truth. No one could control her now. The chains had shattered, and the future was hers to define. Armand sat behind his desk, his eyes cold and calculating. Across from him, Meera stood, her posture rigid, her voice steady with defiance. The room was tense, suffocating. Arman, you have always been naive, Meera. You thought you had a choice. You thought you could escape me, Meera. No, Arman, you only thought you had control. Arman leaned forward, his fists tightening on the desk, his voice rising. Control is all I have, Meera. That's all I need. Meera, you can't control everything, not anymore. Arman's gaze bore into her, his grip tightening, but her resolve only grew stronger. You think you can challenge me? You're nothing without me. Meera, I am more than you ever wanted to believe. Arman's jaw clenched, his breath quickening, his power slipping through his fingers. In her modest apartment, the air was thick, with unspoken words and heavy breaths. Meera sat alone, her fingers moving deliberately over her phone, composing a message that would change everything. Meera, it's time. The message was simple, yet powerful. Arman's lies and manipulation end here. The truth will be known. She hesitated, her heart racing, before pressing send. The words were a declaration of freedom, a challenge to the control Arman once held over her. Every second that passed felt like a step toward the edge, a leap into the unknown, but one she was willing to take. Arman's world was about to fall apart, and Meera was ready for whatever came next. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with tension. Arman sat in a dark corner, his eyes cold and unyielding, while Meera stood at the witness stand, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath her words. Arman Khan is accused of manipulation, control, and exploitation. Meera Singh has courageously brought these charges forward. Her strength and resilience have given a voice to those who have suffered in silence. Arman's expression twisted into a mask of disdain. His arrogance had always been his downfall, believing he was untouchable. Meera, you manipulated my dreams, my fears, my entire life. You controlled my choices, and it's time for you to answer for that. The jury deliberated in a hushed room. Arman's empire crumbled piece by piece, his deceit laid bare in the courtroom's harsh light. Years of manipulation were exposed in testimonies from former associates, friends, and victims who finally spoke out. The trial had ended, but Meera's journey wasn't over. Sitting in her small apartment, she stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The weight of her experiences sat heavy on her, yet her determination burned brighter than ever. Meera. Meera, quietly to herself. This isn't just about me anymore. This is about justice for everyone who was silenced. Each court session tested her emotional strength. The betrayal, the manipulation, the fear. It all returned in waves. But Meera refused to falter. Justice wasn't an easy path. It was a road paved with sacrifice. The fallout from the whispers followed them, and their peace shattered. Mother, we lost everything. And for what? For your foolish quest for justice, Meera? Maybe we lost everything, but I won't stop fighting for what's right. Arman's control ended with me. The family home felt hollow, the love and warmth replaced by the harsh reality of betrayal and loss. Yet, through every tear and scream, Meera's resolve only deepened. In the quiet hours of the night, Meera sat alone, the weight of her sacrifice pressing down on her. Each testimony replayed in her mind, each memory a wound that refused to heal. Meera, justice came at a cost. But was it worth it? The walls seemed to close in around her, as guilt threatened to drown her in its icy grip. Her future, once bright and full of possibilities, felt distant and intangible now. The trial had become a public spectacle. News outlets were filled with stories of Arman's abuse, the media dissecting the case from every angle. The community was divided. Some hailed Meera as a hero, others condemned her as a threat to societal values. Meera Singh stands at the forefront of a new era of justice, but at what cost? Is personal sacrifice justified in the pursuit of truth? On one side, activists rally for Meera's bravery, while on the other, conservative groups feared the erosion of traditional boundaries. The debate raged on, a battle between change and comfort, on a wall of mere speech that contrasted heavily with the life she had created for herself. With the months passed, but the wounds remained. Meera stood at the crossroads, reflecting on the true cost of her fight. The courtroom may have been a battlefield, but her heart was the battlefield now. Meera, deep in thought. Justice comes with a price, but is it a price I can live with? In the end, Meera had freed herself, but her journey didn't end there. The echoes of betrayal, manipulation, and resilience would remain, etched into her soul, shaping her path forward. Meera sat by the window, staring into the distance. The city's noise faded into silence, her thoughts swirling with unanswered questions. Justice had been served, but at what cost? Meera, whispering to herself, did it ever truly balance the scales? Her mind raced through courtroom scenes, testimonies, evidence, the hollow gavel falling against the wood. Each moment replayed, yet the emotional scars lingered. Justice felt like a fragile illusion, a fleeting glimpse of accountability amidst a sea of pain. Memories of betrayal haunted her. Whispers in the dark, cold manipulation, and shattered dreams. Anger coiled tightly within her, simmering beneath her composed exterior. Sadness threatened to drown her, but strength held her afloat. Meera, speaking softly, eyes distant, revenge can feel like justice, but it's a fleeting satisfaction. Forgiveness, can that ever find its way in? She wrestled with the weight of her choices, each one steeped in pain and loss. Was there a line between justice and vengeance, or had she blurred it beyond recognition? The memories of societal pressures were sharp, cutting through her mind like a blade. Arman had manipulated more than her thoughts. He had shaped her into something the world demanded, a reflection of what society deemed acceptable. Meera, with a bitter smile, they told me to conform, to be small, but I fought back. Now, as she moved forward, free of Arman's grip, the rift between her past and her present was undeniable. She no longer needed to wear the mask society once imposed upon her. Her corner left in a substantial hole in her heart. She pulled me in. Yet, the voices of the past still echoed in the silence. Despite the losses, Meera felt her strength grow. Each sacrifice, each moment of resistance, had carved a deeper resilience within her. The journey had transformed her, not into a victim, but into a survivor. Meera, quietly, with conviction, I may have lost parts of myself, but I found a whole new strength. Her reflection in the mirror spoke of more than just physical scars. It was the embodiment of her journey, a testament to her survival and refusal to be silenced. Every choice carried weight. The ones that hurt the most left scars on her loved ones, shaping their futures as much as hers. Her legacy was not easily defined. It was messy, complex, and riddled with moral ambiguity. Meera, speaking into the void, but at a cost. How do I reconcile their pain with my freedom? The choices she made echoed beyond the courtroom, touching the lives of those who depended on her, loved her, or feared her. The ripple effect spread into uncharted waters where no answers were simple. Meera stood tall. The final chapter closed on a tumultuous chapter of her life. The weight of the past had been lifted, and though the emotional scars remained, they no longer defined her. Meera, smiling softly, almost triumphantly. Every step forward is a step toward liberation. The sun set on her reflections, casting a golden glow over her face. Her gaze was fixed forward, unyielding and strong. The moral dilemmas, the sacrifices, and the battles fought, all had led her to a place of empowerment. She walked away from the tragedy, a beacon of strength, with the knowledge that true freedom came at a steep cost, but one she was willing to embrace.